Do you feel like you are too old to get stronger, like you are too old to make the health and fitness changes that you are wanting? The reality is you actually are not, but you may be too old for some of these other things that we're going to talk about on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast. What are they and how do they affect you? That's exactly what we're going to be diving into. We're going to cue our introduction and then we're going to get right into this week's episode. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing this idea of like, well, I'm too old to get stronger. Or I'm too old to do X, Y, Z. Look, getting stronger may feel like it is out of the question for you, but the reality is it is not. You need to understand some key principles though, because even though you're not too old to get stronger, you are too old to be doing some things that we are going to be discussing today that are actually holding you back from getting stronger. So that's what we want to dive into. But before we do, we have an ask for you.
We actually have two things. An ask.
Two things.
And a special gift that I'm so excited about. Okay, so first of all, if you didn't know, leaving a rating review about this podcast really tremendously, amazingly, over the top helps us, number one, gain traction, and so that we can reach more people, help more people be stronger and healthier in their life. And number two, get more and more amazing podcast guests. So if you wouldn't mind, if you've been enjoying our content, pause this podcast now, scroll to the bottom of Apple Podcasts or iTunes, and leave us that rating review. We appreciate it so much because it helps us so much. Number two, we have a gift for you. Okay, so Charlie and I just decided to open up our membership for free. So,
yes,
if you want to get stronger at home with all the principles that we talk about here, we have a lot of podcast followers that are like, I love your stuff, wish we could have some hands-on guidance. This is where you get the hands-on guidance. So go to our website, www.exerciseforlifestudios.com, and you can sign up for a 2-week free trial. That is enough time to do an entire program. I know we name drop a lot of programs on here, but get in there, get your 2-week free trial so that you can try out all the exercises, all the workout plans from the comfort of your home. Minimal equipment, and we can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, we are very excited about this. A lot of people are getting in. A lot of people are loving it. So again, like Julie said, all you have to do to get started is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com. So today we are exploring this idea of like, oh, I am too old to get stronger. Like my time has passed. The only thing I'm going to be able to do going forward is getting weaker. Now, the reality is that is not the case. You can still get stronger, but if you're applying any of the things that we are talking about today, then you may actually be too old to get the results that you're wanting to get, because these things your body may be too old for and they may actually be holding you back. So we are calling this episode, You Are Not Too Old to Get Stronger, but... ... because that but really is the thing that ultimately is holding us back from getting stronger once we hit a certain biological, chronological age. So you are not too old to get stronger, but we do want to talk to you about some things that you may be too old for today that are holding you back from getting stronger.
So the first thing that you are definitely too old for is to exercise without a strategy. Now, a lot of times, a lot of people exercise when there's time, when they can make time, when they've find something they like. They only do it when they like, when they're feeling when all the stars are aligned, they do it. But here's the thing, exercising without a strategy, that's what that is called. So you need to create a strategy, whether that's creating how often you're exercising. We often recommend that you need to be exercising and specifically doing like your resistance training 4 days a week. Your intensity, your program, that's actually why in the Exercise for Life membership, we create programs. So like you're actually on like a journey, you're on a path. So create a strategy so that it doesn't depend on all the stars aligning and everything being perfect and your knee feeling good that day. You figure out a strategy that's going to work because you are too old to exercise without a strategy.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people just try to apply the same tactics that they have their entire life of like, oh, I'm just going to do it when I can. You know, I'm just going to do what I can when I can. And for a period of our life that feels like, oh, okay, well, if I'm doing what I can when I can, like like, how can I possibly do any more? But the reality is, once you hit a certain age, like, you need to have that strategy. And the earlier in your life you can implement the strategy, the better results you will get, not only at that stage of your life, but going forward as well. But once you hit a certain age, then you definitely need to be implementing a strategy. And like Julie said, that's why we implement programs within the Exercise for Life membership, not just one-off workouts, so you can have that strategy and you can have that progression every single time you work out. The second thing that you are too old for is to do your resistance training inconsistently. All right, this is a huge thing. A lot of times we default to doing cardio for our workouts because of the convenience of cardio. And believe me, I get it. It's super convenient to just throw on your shoes and go for a walk, or to, be on your cycle bike in your house, or to go for a jog or a run or whatever, right? It feels like you need such little planning. It feels like you need to do such little preparation for it. You can just, I have some time. Let me go right now. And that's awesome. We don't want to take away that convenience, but we also need to emphasize that you need to be doing your resistance training. Like Julie said, our recommendation, the thing that we try to get our members to do within the Exercise for Life membership, is doing their resistance training at least 4 days a week. And across the board, that's what people are doing. It's so cool to see. But here's the thing. Most people that aren't working with us, most people that aren't in our membership aren't doing their resistance training that much. Most people are doing their resistance training sporadically at best. I'll do it, once or twice this week, but, I won't be able to get it in at all, the following week and, everything like that, right? We are constantly justifying our ability to, exercise or not, based on all the other circumstances in our life. But here's the thing. You are not too old to get stronger, but you are too old to be inconsistently taking the actions that you need to take in order to get stronger. And one of those primary actions is doing your resistance training. And we're recommending at least trying to get it in 4 times a week. That's what we see, like, across the board, people respond really well to.
Resistance training inconsistently is probably the number one thing that I see with people 50 and over. I think that for some reason, I've noticed that when my clients, I specifically work with women 50 and over, 60 and over, they have a lot of things that come up in their bodies that they find as a good reason to not resistance train. But then while resolving that thing, they think they've taken 3 weeks off and they've actually taken 3 months off. And so in those 3 months, they've lost a lot of strength, a lot of function. And so although, as you age, stuff comes up, you have pressure here, you feel weird there, or whatever, it's still important to resistance train. Unless resistance training is bringing about some kind of negative result, which most of the time it's not. It's not making you feel less strong at the end. It's not flaring up your issue when you especially if you're following the Exercise for Life principles, if it's a joint issue. It's not making you feel like sick or lightheaded afterwards. It's still important to keep up your strength. A lot of times people feel like, I'm dealing with, this thing going on. I don't know, maybe a shoulder issue. So then their whole body becomes deconditioned rather than just being strategic around the shoulder. So most of the times when your body is changing or going through something, it's still a really great way and a really important thing to keep your muscles and your function up, keep your muscles strong, keep your muscle volume there, because it slips away more quickly than we think. And that's why resistance training consistently is so important. The next piece that you are too old for is to work out like you're in your 20s. I don't know about you, but the last time I was at a high school or college football game, and I saw the cheerleaders warming up and the football players warming up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember doing that in high school. I remember doing that in college. You can't do that stuff now. Here's the thing. As we age, our bodies are able to tolerate less stress. That doesn't mean they're able to tolerate less workout. You just have to work out differently. But when people are young, they can handle a lot of stuff and not feel that bad because their other stressors aren't there. The stressor of time or age, the stressor of mental emotional stress usually isn't there, so their bodies are recovering really fast. As you age, your body recovers much more slowly. So we have to make sure that when you're exercising, you're not beating it up in the first place. You're only going there for the positive benefits, for the push in the right direction. Charlie always says this line that I love. It's like, you got to work out today so that you can work out tomorrow. It's setting you up for your workout tomorrow. So never think, I'm just going to knock it out of the park today, and then tomorrow and the next day and the next day, you're going to be, toasted up on your couch because you can't move.
No, you're absolutely right. I think in 2 big things that people do earlier in their life that they really need to cut out as their sole form of exercise. I'm not saying don't do them at all, but don't have it be your sole form of exercise. Number one is playing sports. Like a lot of times, when you are in middle school, high school, and even into college, like playing sports, doing rec leagues, doing, social leagues and stuff like that, that is what's considered your form of exercise. It's not that you can't do that as you get older, but it can't be your only form of exercise. Number two are the really high intensity classes. Okay. It doesn't mean that you can't work out at a high intensity. It doesn't mean that you can't sprinkle in those classes into your workout routine, but to have that be your only form of exercise, you are really asking for something to happen from an issue standpoint, from an injury standpoint, if that's the only way you're going about exercising. So it's not that you can't do it, but just like, with sports, it can't be the only way that you are going about exercising. And so then to add to that, Julie, the other thing that you brought up that I really liked is like, look, you can't approach your workouts with the idea of like, well, how I'm working out today is going to require that I take 2 or 3 days to recover from. You can't do that. Okay. I know a lot of times when you are at high school age, when you are college age, when you are in your 20s, you can work out really hard and then the next day feel sore, and then the day after that be completely recovered. Guess what? As you get older, your recovery, like you're saying, Julie, slows down. So you take so much longer to recover, and not only are you taking so much longer, but you are a much greater risk for injuring yourself because you are coming into those workouts more deconditioned or not as prepared as your body was when you were in your high school age, college age, and in your 20s. Okay, so those are the big things that you can't do when it means like, hey, you are not too old to get stronger, but you are too old to work out like you're in your 20s. Okay, the fourth of 5 things that we're going to cover today is you're not too old to get stronger, but you are too old to think your body will just get better on its own. All right, look, when you are, again, a teenager, when you are in your 20s, when you are progressing from your mid-20s, maybe even into your late 20s, your body just naturally gets better. You naturally get stronger. You naturally get more athletic. You naturally get taller. all of those things, right? But by the time you hit your early 30s, mid 30s, definitely by the time you hit your mid 30s, your body just stops naturally getting better. You have to actually start working at it for it to get better, for it to get stronger, for you to get in better physical condition, for you to become more mobile. Your body's just not naturally doing it on its own. So if you are approaching your everyday life, if you're approaching your workouts with the idea of like, okay, well, if I just, do a little bit, my body will just kind of take care of the rest. It's like, I just need this little bit of stimulus and, oh yeah, my body knows that, okay, I'm going to start getting stronger now. You give it that little bit of stimulus and your body's like, what in the world are you doing? We were supposed to stop getting stronger 30 years ago. So now you're telling me that you want, I'm fighting that. I'm going to fight you on that. Okay. It doesn't mean that you can't convince it to do otherwise, but it's not going to do it by itself. You have to consistently apply the stimulus. You have to consistently apply the suggestion to your body. Hey, it's time for us to get stronger. Hey, it's time for us to get in better physical condition. Hey, it's time for us to get more mobile, to move better. And you have to constantly apply the things within your workouts with the strategy and the consistency in order to help guide you, in order to help rather progress you along that path to getting stronger, to getting in better physical condition.
Also, think about when you were a teenager. Did you hurt yourself ever? Like, did you sprain your ankle? Did you, hurt your hip?
I definitely did.
Yeah, I know you used to sprain your ankles all the time. So you would, when you were a teenager and you hurt your ankle, you didn't have that like a permanent resume stamp of like, I have a funky thing going on with my ankles. Because here's the thing, you probably just kept working through it, right? Probably when you were that young, you probably could have used a little extra TLC, but you kept exercising, you kept moving, you kept playing basketball, you kept doing all the things.
You just tied the shoelaces tighter and kept going.
Tighter and keep going, right? And because there's constant stimulus on the body to get better. And then as we get older, if we start getting injured sometimes, or we get one injury, like it starts to become this permanence. Like, oh yeah, I've got this ankle thing. Oh yeah, like 5 years ago, I hurt my ankle or something. And then we start to maybe sometimes baby it, sometimes do different things. And so although it's important to observe what's going on in your body, still adding in the strength and keep working at it is going to be really important, especially as you age, because your body's ability to heal all by itself slows down. And sometimes we don't have time for that. We don't have time to have a million different stamps of like, yeah, I got a hip thing, a back thing, a knee thing, an ankle thing. And somewhere along the lines, we're going to overdo things sometimes, whether it's on purpose, like in a workout, or it's on accident, like during a workout, or in real life. We're like, oh, shoot, I just, my back feels a little weird. You got to keep putting in the right stimulus, strengthening the muscles. And we really teach this in our membership of how to listen to your body so that you're not injuring yourself. The last point, and probably my favorite one, is you are too old to not push yourself in your workouts. And I also put in there in strategic ways, because a lot of times you're like, but hold on a second, you said don't work out in my in my 20s, but also don't push myself. I'm too old to not push myself. See, pushing yourself, I put this point in there because I want this idea of you regularly challenge your body, right? In strategic ways that aren't going to hurt you, but you are still applying the challenge. Our bodies constantly adapt to the environment that it's in. So if you sit all day and then you sit in your car and then you stand and cook dinner and you sit and eat dinner and then you sit and watch Netflix and you're sitting all the time, your body is going to say, this is our environment and this is the challenge that we need to adapt to. So all that muscle that we needed when we were playing sports in college, we can dump it. All that coordination that we developed during, whatever, we can dump that because we're not using it. So to keep stuff, you have to use it like that. So during your exercise, during your workouts, make sure you're strategically pushing yourself in ways that are not going to injure yourself. You got to listen to your body, but you have to keep that challenge. A lot of times when I work with, especially women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they're like, well, I'm just too old. I can't be pushing myself. Well, we have to in some ways, unless you just want to lose all your muscle mass, lose your bone mass, lose all of that stuff. We have to remind your body to keep that. And we do that by having times of challenge on your body.
Yeah, and this is such a great point. And I think the fear of pushing yourself, the fear of challenging yourself, really, it stems from a good place, because I think, there was a period in our lives where when we didn't know how to exercise, really pushing ourselves ultimately meant that we were going to get injured or meant that we were going to be sore. And so there's an aversion to that. Obviously, like, we don't want to get injured ourselves. We don't want to get sore. And so the way that most people know how to do that is by not challenging themselves that much. Oh, I'm not going to do an exercise until I get really fatigued. I'm not going to, try to walk really fast or try to run really hard because last time I did it, I got sore. It took me a few days to recover, or, like I tweaked something and I don't want to do that. So I completely get that, right? Like, we are not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that you need to push yourself and risk injury, or you need to challenge yourself and risk feeling sore, but you still need to challenge yourself, right? That's why we have our exercise for life principles. That's why we have all these systems and processes in place to make sure that you don't get sore, to make sure that you don't injure yourself. Everything that we teach you to do on this podcast is to help you be able to exercise in those ways without feeling achy, sore, or injured. But the thing is, your body responds to challenge. The only way to change your body is to ultimately change your body in a positive manner, is to ultimately challenge your body. And so you still need to push yourself during your workouts. You still need to challenge yourself, and then you need to implement the principles, the strategies, and the tactics that we teach you on this podcast and throughout all of our content in order to do those workouts in a way that is highly challenging, but is completely appropriate for your body, is not going to leave you sore, is not going to leave you feeling achy, and is going to have such a low risk for injury that it's not something that even crosses your mind, because you're like, oh, I know that I can really push myself with this exercise and I'm going to be totally fine when I follow these principles. So this is really a huge thing, because this is one of the things that I think so many people leave out, along with the belief of like, well, I'm too old to get stronger. They carry that also belief of, well, I'm too old to really exercise hard. You're not too old to exercise hard. In fact, you're too old to not exercise hard in a strategic way. And that strategy and those tactics are exactly what we give you. And during this episode, we also want to give you the belief and the understanding that you can push yourself as long as you have those strategies, those tactics in place.
This whole concept of of what we're talking about today. Like, you're not too old, you are too old. This idea that we have running through our head is really a story that we give ourselves. And all of us have stories, but it's just deciding which story, and sometimes stories are given to you. Like, you've had all these examples in your life that you're like, yes, I must be getting old. My knees feel older than when I was 20. I must be getting old. Oh, I have grandkids now. I must be getting old.
I don't like the popular music anymore.
I don't like pop music anymore. My music is not the pop music anymore. I must be getting old, right? Our environment can sometimes lead us to believe that we are old. But in the end, it's our choice to decide, like, do I want to behave like I'm old? Because we can't change the number that you are. Like, the number of years that you own, we can't change, but we can change what you think should be happening during that time, during the age of 75. What do you think that should mean? So really this podcast is about changing what you decide to accept. And if you do decide to accept that, hey, me going into my 60s, my 70s, my 80s, maybe 40s seems old for you, you really can do a lot with that. But what you can't do is let your fitness go to the wayside unless that's what you want to accept as your story. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not wanting to accept that you want to be a couch potato just because you're 75. There's a lot of things that you can do, because it's all about not what the environment is telling you about your story, but what you're choosing to accept as your story.
Now, the other thing that I want to add to that is I don't want this episode to feel like, oh, well, I'm this age demographic. And, Julie and Charlie, you're really picking on me, because I want to let you know that we're adding ourselves into we are too old to exercise without a strategy. Mm-hmm. Like, we're too old to resistance training consistently. We're too old to work out like we're in our 20s. We're in our mid-30s, but we're still too old to do that, okay? Because we are now at the point in our lives where if we don't start implementing all the things that we talk about every single week, that's the stuff that we do implement, but if we don't do that, our bodies are going to go downhill. We're going to lose fitness. We are going to lose strength. We are going to lose mobility. We're going to lose capability to do the things that we want to do in our life. We are too old to think that, our body is just going to, heal all by itself. It's just going to get all better on its own. And we are certainly too old to not push ourselves in strategic ways during our workouts. So this is not just if you're listening to this and you are in your 60s or your 70s or your 80s, if you are in your mid to late 30s, if you are in your 40s, this is speaking to you as well, okay? We want you to keep exercising. You are not too old to get stronger, but there are some things that you are too old for, and those things are ultimately the things that are likely going to keep you from getting stronger. If you keep trying to do those things, if you keep trying to exercise without a strategy, if you keep trying to do your resistance training inconsistently, if you keep trying to work out like you are in your 20s, if you keep trying to think that, oh, my body will just, heal all by itself, and if you keep trying to not push yourself strategically in your workouts, all of those things will ultimately keep you from getting stronger.
Charlie, I was just thinking that we really could have switched the too old to too young. If you're 80 listening to this, you're too young to let your strength go out the door. Mm-hmm. You're way too young for that. And we could really switch all of it. Mm-hmm. I remember even earlier this week, Charlie and I were having a conversation, and Charlie said, Julie, you're too young to not be pushing yourself in your workouts. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And I was telling Charlie, I was thinking, when people talk to me, I'm a personal trainer. People always tell me their reasons of why they're not exercising. And a lot of times I think they're pretty silly, because I've already worked through that problem with many other people. I already know how to solve that problem. And I said, Charlie, all my reasons for missing workouts or not pushing myself when I should, someone else probably looks at it and thinks, that's ridiculous. You don't have time for that? Oh, you're too tired? Oh, so always remember that we're saying you're too old to not be exercising, but you're also too young to not be exercising. We're going to hold on to that strength, and we know you can do it because we see it happen all the time. It's just when you apply these unique principles of the Exercise for Life method, when you're looking at our membership, you're going to really see and notice the difference with how we instruct you to exercise, so that you can push yourself without exercising like you're in your 20s, so that you can keep your muscle mass and your bone density without risking injury, and so that you can exercise regularly. You can't even imagine how many people I talk to, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm too sore. I have to only work out twice a week because, the other days I'm too sore, right? So that's why we created our membership. So make sure you take advantage of the 2-week free trial because we are so pumped about the amount of people we're going to be able to help with that.
Absolutely. Again, all you have to do to get in on that is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com. You can sign up for that 2-week free trial right there. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is carrying the belief with them that they are either too old to exercise or too old to get stronger? I'm not going to work out. It's not going to do me any benefit. Share this episode with them so they can understand that they're not too old to get stronger, but there are some things that they are too old for, and those things are ultimately the things that will prohibit them, that will keep them from getting stronger. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.